All right. So again, I'm repeating it. So we have what we have to explain here that how long the partition was stoppable. In fact, so partition of India was stoppable till 1946. In fact, that is a fact. Only after 1946, situations became so fertile or so aggressive. All right. So you can say dangerous that it was having no other option except to partition, except to go for partition of India. So 1946 election was a remarkable, you can say, year for partition in that way, because here Congress party till here, in fact, was trying to placate the Muslim League, or like for not to go for partition. And most importantly, when Congress party leaders refused to share the power with Jinnah, and they also mentioned that they did not need Muslim support in order to win a majority vote in elections. This attitude actually brought another fear among the Muslim population, especially among Jinnah, that India is going to be a secular nation in that way. And obviously, Jinnah and Muslim League used to believe that the National Congress was always a Hindu nationalist party. That's what actually was their belief system. So obviously, this system got nurtured finally, and finally, the insecurity in the minds of Muslims increased tremendously after 1946. And because of rising communal tensions across India, it actually created a situation for the partition of India only. And when this issue of the cabinet mission plan came, and when the issue of cabinet mission plan was accepted by both these parties, it became clear that they wanted to segregate India into, let's say, A, B, C provinces. So somewhere the idea of partition was being accepted by these parties. And when this issue came up in front of the Britishers also to make India free, of course, by this time the Mountbatten Plan had a clear-cut mentioning about the issue of partition. So partition on the lines of course, the Muslim majority areas only, and that's actually how partition could not be avoided largely. But the point is, why did, let's say, I mean, Congress or even Mahatma Gandhi accept the issue of partition? See, in the words of Mahatma Gandhi, of course, Mahatma Gandhi never accepted partition in his heart. So that's what actually he once mentioned, that he will never accept partition in his heart. But of course, it is good for the both the communities to go for partition because of the rising communal tensions and the rising communal violence across India, and especially when India was about to gain partition, violence had already struck out in the regions of Bengal. And as you know that at the time of India's independence, Mahatma Gandhi was not even in Delhi; he was there in Bengal to to pacify the situation. So that was the Gandhi's stand on partition. Whereas the Congress stand on partition was, it was always clear that they never wanted to label itself as a Hindu nationalist party. All right. Therefore, that was a major agenda of difference between Muslim League's Jinnah and Indian National Congress Party, and that's how, of course, they kept on trying to scuttle down the issue of partition as long as it's possible. But despite their efforts, like they had conducted several efforts of pacifying with Jinnah right from Simla conference onwards. All right, we have various instances where Muslim League was approached by Congress Party or Congress Party leadership to pacify the situation, to find out some other path, other way out, uh, without going for partition of India. All right, in terms of sharing the power between the Muslim League and the International Congress. Despite their efforts, they could not succeed on that. And finally, with the rising communal tensions only, even Pandit Nehru was the leader of International Congress at that particular point of time. He had to accept the partition as the last option in terms of getting freedom of India. So without acquiring the freedom of India, it was also not possible for the International Congress to suppress the communal forces which are already taking a shape across India, especially in Punjab and Bengal region. So they wanted to accept partition for the sake of the freedom of India. So freedom of India was essential to acquire the power, and once power would be acquired, then only there would be a control over the communal rights, communal violence across India. So because of this factor only, the International Congress had to accept the the issue of partition with Jinnah. In the words of Ramchandra Guha, who very beautifully puts it, the short-sightedness of Congress and Jinnah's ambitions, Britain's immorality and cynicism had made partition inevitable. In retrospect, it could have been implemented better way. That is what actually Ramchandra Guha has written about the inevitability of partition of India. All right, that is how you have to understand the issue of partition. Then we have the next issue, that is in the context of, was the Gandhian civil disobedience movement better organized and more forceful than the non-cooperation movement, and how far the method of struggle to struggle was effective in the above mentioned movements of Gandhiji. All right. So what you have to write over here? Now see, first and foremost, you have to write over here the difference between the CDM and the NCM. Fine. So on the basis of the organizational strength, on the basis of the objectives, what were the differences between the CDM and the NCM, that you have to highlight over here. Fine. Secondly, you have to also highlight that what was the achievement of CDM and the NCM. Fine. So on the basis of the achievement only, you can classify that whether CDM was successful more in the context of NCM. All right, because in both these movements, of course, Gandhiji launched it, but it was withdrawn by Gandhiji in between. That we all know about it. All right, so that is what actually you have to explain this idea. As far as the CDM movement is concerned, definitely by this particular point of time, the popularity of Gandhiji increased tremendously across India. So therefore, the participation in this movement was quite rich, quite greater than what was the partition of NCM. But at the same time, the partition of Muslim population in NCM was more than the partition in the CDM. That we also know about it. Fine. So women participation, peasants participation, so definitely these people's participation in CDM was much more higher than the NCM. But at the same time, the participation of Muslim population in CDM was lesser than the participation in the NCM. So in that way, of course, we can compare the CDM with the NCM. But the point is how far the method of struggle to struggle was effective in the above mentioned movements of Gandhiji. See, Gandhiji had adopted this STS movement or STS method for the purpose of one very obvious thing. And what was that? The issue was that we know that a mass movement can't be sustained for a long period of time. All right. If you see on your screen, the issue was that if he has launched, let's say, so if he has launched the concept of, let's say, the NCM, if they have launched the concept of NCM, of course, the non-competition movement was withdrawn because of the Chaudi Chaura Khan that we all know about it. All right, so it was withdrawn. All right, so struggle was there. Then it was withdrawn because of Chaudi Chaura Khan due to the violence that was entered into the issue of non-competition movement. So it was withdrawn. So this particular period was known as period of truce in the Gandhi movement. Fine. This in this truce period, what Gandhi did, Gandhi was not sitting passively. Gandhi was still active in terms of seeking the support of masses and making his ideas popular among the masses. All right, so he was still active in terms of launching the, let's say, various rural programs in India. All right, and making the Congress very popular across India. Fine, that was the active. Then again, he found an opportune time in the form of CDM. So in the CDM, of course, this particular point is known as struggle period of Gandhi. All right, so CDM was done. Then again, the Irwin Pact, Gandhi-Irwin Pact was there. With the Gandhi-Irwin Pact, he withdrew the CDM temporarily. That is, this became the period of truce. All right, when the Gandhi-Irwin Pact failed, again he launched the CDM. Again, the period of struggle began. All right, then again CDM by 1934 lost its entire, you can say, fervor. Because of that, again he brought a withdrawal of CDM. So again truce. So this continued by Gandhiji. And of course, in this period when the Gandhiji withdrew the CDM, he was again working in the villages in the form of promotion of Khadi and also the promotion of so-called the issues of Dalits in India. Fine. Issue of the scheduled castes in India. So this is what Gandhi started doing the work. So he was not actually sitting passive. He was still active in the truce period. So this method he adopted because of one fundamental factor. The factor was that he understood right from the beginning. A mass movement can't be sustained for a long period of time. It has to be given some direction in which people can be engaged constructively and they can be found to be engaged productively also in the society. So they cannot actually sacrifice the entire source of livelihood and entirely, you can say, their family obligations for a long period of time. Because this is what actually has been the society, the nature of society of India. So he understood the societal nature very strongly, and because of that only, he started promoting his idea of struggle to struggle in that way. Fine. So he launched the struggle, he withdrew the struggle, and he made the people to follow some other course of action so that they can remain positively engaged for the purpose of India's freedom struggle. When the time came for launching a mass movement, again he asked them to become a part of the mass struggle. So this was a very important strategy of Gandhiji through which he was able to confront the colonial authority with all the forces, that too a forces which should not go into the lap of a very violent and illegal activity. There was another concern of Gandhiji launching this struggle truce struggle method. The moment the movement started getting berserk, started losing the momentum, losing the directions, he withdrew movement immediately. All right. Because of that only, he was not very ordinary person to be understood by ordinary people in India. So people belonging to ordinary, you can say, background was unable to understand his strategies at various particular occasions. Not only that, even the, let's say, the intelligent minds like even Bhagat Singh and others were not able to comprehend his ideas completely when he withdrew the NCM. All right, because it is important to understand Gandhiji's movement from its nature, from its core of its nature, which many people could not understand and appreciate at that particular point of time. That is how you have to explain about the struggle truth struggle method of Gandhiji. Fine. So it is one of the favorite questions of UPSC, asked several times in the optional paper. Again, it can be asked to you. Now, question is very favorite question of UPSC about 1935 Act. We are provided with a car, all brakes and no engines. Critically examine the statement. So it is in the context of 1935 Act. Fine. So 1935 Act, you have to explain in the context of its provisions and its limitations. Very nicely, it is given there in the spectrum book also. स्पेक्ट्रम बुक उठाइएगा, आपको एकदम एक एक पॉइंट उस पे एनालिसिस पे दिया हुआ है. ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन से लेके डायरकी से लेके बाइकैमलिज्म से लेके सब कुछ बड़ी नाइसली एक्सप्लेन किया हुआ है. ठीक है, कि व्हाई Nehru had to say about or had to opine about this act as a as only an eyewash in the eyes of the freedom fighters of India. They wanted to have self government, they wanted to control the government into their own command, but what was given to them was again a complete eyewash. So let us discuss some other question. All right. Question number 16. Great Leap Forward of China was designated to meet the Chinese situation and designed to meet the Chinese situation and was not based on Russian experience. Examine the statement in the light of challenges of Mao Zedong in dealing with China's problems. Now, see, first and foremost, what is Great Leap Forward of China? Great Leap Forward of China is equivalent to the India's policy of uh, the Nehru-Mahalanobis model. Now, if you remember Nehru-Mahalanobis model of India, it was similar to that only. The differences is in the context of that in the Great Leap Forward, Mao Zedong wanted to achieve the economic growth in every sector of Chinese economy, including agriculture to industries. Fine. So there he wanted to achieve a strong, you can say, performance, a strong growth on agriculture and industrial parameters. That was the objective of Great Leap Forward. However, it is said it was influenced by the Russian experience. Now, what was Russian experience? See, Russia had already experimented in the context of the collectivization of agriculture, in the context of the policy of Lenin, in terms of controlled economy in Russia, which actually failed, in fact, and finally led to the beginning of new economic policy in Russia also. Fine. So that is what Russia experienced. But here the idea is that Chinese follow the same experience in China. So answer is not. Why? Because see what China did at the Great Leap Forward in the second 5-year plan of China. China launched the first 5-year plan in 1952. India did it in 1951. China did it in 1952. After the first 5-year plan, China realized that the first 5-year plan has not been very successful in terms of providing the basic amenities or facilities to the people of China. China population was still very rising. It was very high, in fact, very big, in fact, at that particular point of time. And those population didn't have proper meal to eat, proper services to avail, proper productions to be made available for them. So therefore, here what Mao Zedong did, Mao Zedong in the garb of communism controlled the economic activities and started giving a shape to the economic production activities inside China. How? He launched Great Leap Forward in the second 5-year plan in 1956, all right, 57, 58, in fact, 58. And then in 58 onwards, what did he do? He first of all launched collectivization of agriculture policy. Collectivization of agriculture policy means agriculture would be practiced on the commune-based system. Commune system was launched, in fact. What was commune system? Commune system was basically community farming. The land will not be owned by any private person. In nutshell, private farming was abolished. Community farming would be done. Fine. That is what actually it was done. Second, community kitchen would be established. Community kitchen would be established. Whatever would be produced would be, of course, consumed by commonly among the people, and there would be surplus which would go into the state's account. So surplus of production would go into the state account and people would receive only the crops for their own sustenance. All right. So crops will be given to them for their own sustenance. That's what actually would be the policy of the Chinese Communist government in China under the Great Leap Forward. Fine. That is what they did in the field of agriculture. Now, The surplus of agriculture would also be used for industrial processes. So, in the second 5-year plan, he gave a huge emphasis upon industrialization as well. So, labor intensive production of method of production was promoted by China. Industrialization was promoted by China. All right. And they wanted to promote the labor based industrial processes than the machine based industrialization. All right, so that everyone should be employed properly inside China. Fine. And against their employment, the same food grains were distributed to them. In lieu of their employment, salary was not given. The crops were given to them for their sustenance. All right. And then in every village, it was made mandatory to open one industry. Industry should be opened in every village and in neighborhood area of village, so that process of industrialization should get a speed up inside China. Fine. Now see, this particular model, of course, was similar to Russia to a larger extent, because in Russia also they had launched it in a similar way, but Russia failed in that way. And of course, here what did he did? What did Mao Zedong do? Mao Zedong actually started controlling both agriculture and industry under his own command. All right. So agriculture industry was under the control of state completely. That was his policy at that point of time. Fine. However, this policy also could not result into the success of Chinese economy. The Chinese economy suffered a lot in the Great Leap Forward policy. Now, how suffered a lot? The staff, the bureaucrats, the officers appointed by the Chinese Communist Party to collect the revenue or the surplus from the farmers. Now, it was something which was not as a surplus, rather, they were even collecting the subsistence products from the farmers in the name of revenue. Because of the overuse of because the farmland without bringing any scientific method of production, lack of scientific method of production, the farmland productivity decreased sharply within a year itself. So productivity decreased sharply among the farmers, yet because of this production also will go down, yet the collection of revenue was not decreasing. They were collecting the same amount of revenue just to show their authority, the Communist Party authority, that they have been collecting successfully the revenue from the farmers. And this revenue was something which was also from the subsistence of their subsistence products from their farmers. तो हुआ क्या कि जो स्टाफ प्रोविंसेस में थे, जो ऑफिसर प्रोविंसेस में थे, उन्होंने क्या करना शुरू कर दिया, उन्होंने फार्मर्स के पास जो भी क्रॉप्स होता था उसका मेजॉरिटी पार्ट ले लेके वो सरकार को देना शुरू कर दिए, मतलब अपने अथॉरिटी को देना शुरू कर दिए, जस्ट टू शो कि वो अपना काम सही से कर रहे हैं, जबकि वो काम सही से नहीं हो रहा था. प्रोडक्शन आफ्टर ईयर ओनली डिक्रीज शार्पली इनसाइड चाइना. ठीक है. उससे हुआ क्या कि वहां पे जो भी थोड़ा बहुत प्रोडक्ट्स हो रहा था वो भी वो लेके चले जा रहे थे, उसके स्टाफ कम्युनिस्ट जो ऑफिसर्स थे अपने स्टेट के लिए. तो उनके पास बचा कुछ भी नहीं. धीरे धीरे क्या हुआ कि उन्होंने अपने फार्म लैंड पे जितनी भी चिड़िया उड़िया होती सबको मारना शुरू कर दिया. क्यों मारा? सी huge number of sparrows and the farm birds were killed in China at that point of time, क्योंकि they wanted to increase the production. क्योंकि sparrows और farm birds जो होते थे वो काफी सारा प्रोडक्ट्स खा जाते थे फार्मलैंड्स पे, तो उनको उन्होंने मारना शुरू कर दिया. इससे हुआ क्या कि जब वो मर गए बहुत सारे sparrows, the millions of sparrows and farm birds were killed by the Chinese farmers due to this particular policy. सो उससे हुआ क्या कि वो तो मर गए, लेकिन बहुत सारे पेस्ट और इमर्ज कर गए, रोडेंट्स इमर्ज कर गए, चूहे, टिड्डे, बहुत सारे इमर्ज कर गए। फार्म बर्ड्स होते थे तो कम से कम टिड्डे और चूहे को खा जाते थे, तो वो सब भी अब खत्म हो गए। तो वो लोग भी जो है अटैक करना शुरू कर दिए फार्म क्रॉप्स पे। फार्म क्रॉप्स ऑलरेडी उसका प्रोडक्शन डिक्रीज होना शुरू हो गया था, साथ साथ कलेक्शन जो है वो कंटिन्यू था, जिस तरह से कलेक्शन पहले होता था वैसे कलेक्शन वो कर रहे थे। अब इससे क्या हुआ कि वहां पे बहुत बड़ा फेमिन स्टक कर गया 60s में। तो विद दिस फेमिन मिलियंस ऑफ पीपल इनसाइड चाइना गॉट किल्ड, उनके पास खाने को कुछ नहीं था। 45 million people got killed inside China. All right. And because of this only, the Great Leap Forward failed outrightly inside China. All right. So millions of people, they died due to starvation there in China. And this is how the Great Leap Forward failed in China. Fine. So because of this particular factor only, of course, Mao Zedong party got criticized and he got also raped inside his party. Fine. But he was still very popular and he wanted to show his popularity, and therefore he launched his Cultural Revolution also in early 1966. All right, which was not also very much successful, because in this Cultural Revolution also he led his forces to attack upon the innocent youth participants of this revolution. That's what actually was the story of Mao Zedong. All right, so Mao Zedong had failed in this particular initiative of Great Leap Forward at that particular point of time. So Great Leap Forward did not succeed in that. That was the story of Great Leap Forward. Then what were the aims of New Deal? Why did New Deal? What did the New Deal involve, and how is it relevant to the contemporary world? This question can be asked to you in your mains examination this time also. So first and foremost, what are the aims of New Deal? See, aims of New Deal was to revive the economy from the Great Economic Depression. So it was a Great Economic Depression that took place in America, all right, and it has to be eliminated in 1929. It took place. It remained in 1932 in America. So in 32 only, of course, Roosevelt was there as a president, and he finally launched New Deal. So New Deal was launched by Roosevelt, by American President Roosevelt in 1933 onwards. And under this New Deal, there were 3R objectives. All right, 3R objectives were basically providing relief to the sufferers of the new Great Economic Depression, then recovery of the economy, and then reform in infrastructure so that there should not be another occurrence of economic depression there in America. So relief, recovery, and reform. 3Rs were the basic, you can say, uh, objectives involved in the New Deal. Fine. So that is what was the aim of New Deal, to revive the American economy outrightly, and to revive that, they launched the three set of policies that is known as 3R policy: relief, recovery, and reform there in America. In relief, the objective was to provide immediate food and basic essential materials so that people should not die with the starvation and hunger there in America. Recovery was in the context of to recover the lost, you can say, economic sectors there in America, especially in the context of agriculture, in the context of industrial activities there in America. And reform was basically in the context of the institutional and infrastructural reforms there in America. So Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, is the best example to actually quote over here in the context of reform policy of Roosevelt there in America. Through these measures, only America is said to have revived its economy under New Deal policy. However, there are scholars who say that American economy revived only due to their participation in the World War II, due to only the occurrence of World War II, because in that World War II only they were able to sell billions of dollars worth of the arms and ammunitions to the European counterparts, and through that only the economy got revived permanently. All right, that is how the scholars are of the opinion regarding the effect of New Deal in America. Having said that, New Deal can also be seen in the contemporary time relevant in the context of the COVID-19 impact. So COVID-19 is almost similar to the era of Great Economic Depression, because of COVID-19, depression is also taking place in different parts of the world, including India as well. All right, because demand has almost got settled down due to lack of employment and lack of income to majority of people in India. So this is how we have to understand this particular aspect. And these three R measures could also be effective in terms of addressing the challenges of Indian economy and the global economy as well. That is the three R policy that can also be used in COVID-19 impact. Fine. Then what was Nehru Liaquat Pact? To what extent objective of pact have been made? So it was a news, you must be knowing about it because of CA and RC issue. All right. So it was a news in the context of protecting the interest of minorities in both India and Pakistan, signed between Nehru and Liaquat in 1950. So that was the issue. All right. And of course, the objective of this pact have been made. So in the context of India, we have always adopted a secular policy. Our constitution has made secularism as a part of our you can say preamble. All right. And of course, India is a secular country in that way. So thereby, every minority is respected in this country. On the other hand, the minority issues in Pakistan have been compromised right from the beginning. So in that way, we have to explain this idea. And this is the reason why we have got the issue of CAA recently. The minorities from these countries where they have been facing persecution are going to get the protection in India if they want to migrate to India. That's what actually was a controversy. We all know about it. So it's part of current affairs as well, so you can understand it clearly. Then question is, why did Raja Ram Mohan Roy accept British rule as a fait accompli and wait to work as a force for the advancement of India? See, Raja Ram Mohan Roy understood that the British rule is going to bring a lot of changes in India, especially in socio-economic, socio-cultural practices of India. So, socio-religious and cultural practices of India at that particular point of time was quite backward, and there were many cultural practices which were supported by religion in India. So, therefore, there was a need of reform in both cultural and religious practices in India. So without bringing a reform in the religion, cultural practices could not be reformed. Therefore, social religious reform movement also started in India in the 19th century. This is also called as period of Indian Renaissance in that way. Fine. Now here Raja Ram Mohan Roy understood British rule as a fait accompli because already Britishers had occupied the territories of India after the successful you can say Battle of Plassey and Buxar. So Rajaram Mohan Roy understood that they are going to rule over India. That's one thing. Secondly, that he also accepted British rule as a fait accompli because of the reforms that was needed in India could only be done by the Western educated or Western, you can say, modernized people in this country. All right. So therefore, he supported British rule in India to bring reforms in the socio-religious segments of India. That is how he saw British rule as a fait accompli. All right. And then he also saw British rule as a force for the advancement of India because through them only there could be possibility of changes in the socio-religious aspects of India. All right, because they can introduce the Western and the modernized concepts in the religious and cultural interpretations in India. And he was successful in doing that also by enacting the abolition of Sati Act in 1829. That is the biggest achievement of Raja Ram Mohan Roy in terms of seeking the help of the Britishers in terms of eliminating many of the social evils from this country. Fine. To what extent he is rightly called as the father of Indian Renaissance? So, of course, he was the first modern man in India because of his ideas and because of his philosophies of India. He was a well-read person. He was a highly literate person. He knew various languages: Persian, English, Hindi, Urdu. Of course, you can say the Spanish. All right. So these languages were known by him, and because of that, he was very versed. You can say well versed in terms of the readings of Gita, of course, Quran, Bible, etc. So he has gone through all those religious textbooks, and because of these ideologies only, he actually talked about various reforms in the Hindu society as well. All right. So he launched Brahmo Sabha, Brahmo Samaj as well. So because of these factors only, he is known as the beginner or the torch bearer of the Indian Renaissance in India. All right. That's the reason why he's called as father of Indian Renaissance. But at the same time, he was equally supported by various other reformers. So we have to also add one sentence for the other reformers also who were contemporary to Raja Ram Mohan Roy and who also contributed in the social religious reform movements of India. That's what we have to explain this idea. All right. Last question is discuss the role of foreigners and foreign land based movements in the freedom struggle of India. So here you have to start writing. You can write it right from the you can say the entry of any Besant, all right, in the Indian scenario or Indian freedom struggle. All right, 1893 was the year when any Besant came down to India. All right, and 1893 was the same year when Indian leader like Mahatma Gandhi he went to South Africa. All right. So Mahatma Gandhi went to South Africa. There he struggled and he learned about his experiences in South Africa. Then finally he came down to India. All right. Annie Besant also from Ireland. She came down to India. All right. This is how the situations changed. Fine. So Annie Besant created the background in which Mahatma Gandhi overtook this particular movement. So home rule was definitely a background created by Annie Besant and Tilak both. But of course, Annie Besant was important in that particular context. Fine. So we have to explain about that particular aspect. And then finally, we have to also explain about the Gadar movement, the home rule, the Indian Home Indian League launched by various freedom fighters. India House was launched in London, Paris, Berlin. All right. So these examples are there. In fact, Gadar movement is the best example. You have to quote about Gadar movement elaborately, and then finally you have to also add an example of Subhash Chandra Bose. So Subhash Chandra Bose also took the help of the foreign land in terms of exercising freedom struggle for India. Whether you take the example of he went to Germany, he went to of course Malaya. Another he launched his entire international army for Malaya Peninsula only. Fine. He took the help of even Japanese to eliminate the Britishers. This is how role of foreigners can be explained in the context of India's freedom struggle. So we have a lot of examples to explain it. Fine, that's what actually you have to keep in mind. So with this, I'm concluding today's discussion. I mean, this is completely done in that way. So you can now read the entire answers. You will get a lot of ideas in this manner. ठीक है? तो इतना ही आपको करना है, ठीक है? और फिर हम लोग नेक्स्ट डिस्कशन करेंगे उसके ज्योग्राफी के ऊपर, ठीक है? ज्योग्राफी अगर आप लिख लेंगे तो फिर उसके ऊपर हम डिस्कशन शुरू कर देंगे, ठीक है? तो इसी वीक में हाँ
वो आपने वो स्ट्रक्चर आंसर का सर अभी सही है मेरा?
हाँ स्ट्रक्चर सही है भैया।
स्ट्रक्चर बोला था ना मुझे चेंज करने के लिए, तो
हाँ स्ट्रक्चर सही है, अब बेटर है, आपका आंसर बेटर हुआ है, बहुत पहले से बेटर हुआ है, ठीक है? हाँ अब आप मार्क्स देखेंगे, आपका मार्क्स अच्छा है ओवरऑल, जितना आपने अटेम्प्ट किया है उस हिसाब से यू हैव स्कोर्ड गुड मार्क्स दिस टाइम। हाँ
17 क्वेश्चन अटेम्प्ट किया था सर।
हाँ तो उस हिसाब से यू हैव स्कोर्ड गुड मार्क्स। सिमिलरली फिर विकास आल्सो, विकास आई थिंक ही हैज आल्सो आई मीन लेफ्ट कपल ऑफ क्वेश्चंस बट ही हैज स्कोर्ड आल्सो गुड मार्क्स।
सर थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो जाता है घर में, थोड़ा 15-20 मिनट ऊपर नीचे हो जाता है, फिर समझता नहीं है इसमें क्या कैसे करना है।
हाँ नहीं उसको थोड़ा सा स्पीड अप करना है और जहाँ जहाँ अननेसेसरी बात लिख रहे हैं ना उसको अवॉइड कर लेना है। और इनफैक्ट जो एग्जैक्टली एक दो क्वेश्चन मैंने आपके आंसर्स पे मैंने चेक भी किए, मैंने लिखे थे कि डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन पे हिट करना है, तो वहाँ पे इंट्रोडक्शन में कुछ आप डाल दिए थे, जैसे बोपला वाला मुझे याद आ रहा है।
बोपला रिवॉर्ड उसमें मैंने
हाँ तो वो सब अवॉइड करना है, उसको कोई रिक्वायरमेंट नहीं है, ठीक है? तो उसको ध्यान रखना है। विकास के केस में भी आई थिंक 1 or 2 क्वेश्चंस ही लेफ्ट, आई थिंक सो।
One question I left.
One question. So in that way, your performance was also sound and answer were good in fact. Right. So उस हिसाब से अगर देखेंगे तो both of you have been scoring good marks. In fact, 120 plus 140, 50. Vikas also scored. So by this logic, your score is good. In fact, in this particular paper, so it means the history is not at all going to be a big problem for both of you. All right. So you have to only manage geography and social issues. So if you manage that, then paper 1 you will score good marks. ठीक है? So कोई दिक्कत नहीं हो पेपर 1 में, ठीक है?
सर अभी कुछ नया नहीं पढ़ना है ना हिस्ट्री में?
नहीं जो है वो रिवाइज करना है और एनसीईआरटी के चैप्टर्स जितने हैं ना उसको एक बार पलट के देख लेने हैं सारा, ताकि समझ में आ जाए कि इस हाँ
जो छोटा इसलिए वो पोस्ट पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस का है ना सर,
हम्म,
पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस इसका सर कुछ अगर आप इवेंट्स एक लिस्ट डाउन करके दे सकते हैं सर, क्योंकि वो इवेंट छूटता नहीं इसमें। वैसे हम लोग कवर कर लेंगे सर पूरा, बट एक जैसा कोई पर्टिकुलर इवेंट होता है ना सर, जैसे कुछ मेन इवेंट्स होंगे, तो वर्ल्ड और इंडियन हिस्ट्री का ये थोड़ा आप एक खाली बस टॉपिक वाइज बना के दे दीजिए कि इतना बार आपको पढ़ के जाना है,
ठीक
तो
है।
वो
मैं
हम लोग
लिस्ट
क्योंकि
बना के
वो
दे दूंगा, एक लिस्ट बना दूंगा वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री के भी और पोस्ट मॉडर्न के भी, दोनों के। ठीक है,
क्योंकि बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसी जो छूट जाती है सर, वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में नहीं नहीं समझ वो पॉइंट छूट
आई
जाते
एग्री,
हैं।
आई एग्री, आई एग्री। हो
तो
सकता है
सर
वो
आप
आपसे
पूछना थोड़ा ये लग रहा है मतलब कि
हाँ, नहीं नहीं, आई agree, agree. I mean, there is a possibility that they might ask you something which is quite hidden in world history, but still that can be a question for all of you. ठीक है, so I will definitely make a list of that. I will give it to you. ठीक है,
सर
ठीक है।
बोलना था सर।
हाँ विकास, सब कुछ
सर वो एनसीईआरटी के पीछे जितने क्वेश्चंस दिए हुए हैं सर, हिस्ट्री के
हाँ
लिए पूछ रहा हूँ सर, जो
हाँ हाँ
एंशियंट हिस्ट्री और मिडिएवल के लिए, तो सर
हाँ
उसके
हाँ।
मॉडल आंसर्स बना लेना सर सही रहेगा सर।
नहीं, मॉडर्न आंसर बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है, उसको एक बार ब्रीफली देख लीजिए एंड व्हाट यू हैव टू डू ना, यू हैव टू सिंपली क्रिएट अ मेंटल मैप ऑफ दोज आंसर्स कि व्हाट शुड हैव बीन रिटन इन दिस पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन। ठीक है, थोड़ा सा आप उसका मेंटल मैप बना लीजिए, ड्रॉ कर लीजिए, स्केचेस ड्रॉ कर लीजिए, फ्लो चार्ट बना दीजिए। ठीक है, कि अगर ऐसा क्वेश्चन आता है तो उसमें क्या क्या पॉइंट्स डालने हैं, दैट्स इट। ठीक है, उतना काफी होगा, क्योंकि क्वेश्चंस एग्जैक्टली वो नहीं रहेंगे, लेकिन उसके इर्द गिर्द में कोई इशू आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछा जा सकता है। तो अगर आपने मेंटल एक्सरसाइज पहले से कर लिया है तो इट विल हेल्प यू देयर इन द फाइनल फ्रेमिंग ऑफ द आंसर्स देयर इन एग्जामिनेशन। तो ये फायदा करेगा वहां पे। ठीक है, ठीक है। then I'm concluding today's session. Again we'll meet for geography discussion this weekend only. ठीक है, see you then, bye bye, take care, take care।
2-3 का टाइम है ना सर ज्योग्राफी सबमिट करने के बाद?
हाँ अभी है, we will be doing it on Sunday itself।
ठीक है सर, ओके।
ठीक है, ओके, चलो बाय बाय, टेक केयर।